thank you all for coming. Welcome to the History Show.
Well, really, it was started by David Wilmot because he proposed the amendment.
The Wilmot Proviso.
In 1846, which forbade slavery and to the new territory that they got from school.
And obviously that didn't go over very well with the South.
No, because the Southerners did not stay as treason to the Constitution.
The North liked it though.
Yeah, because they felt that if slave labor came into the new land, they wouldn't be able to compete with it. So
they weren't opposed to slavery on moral grounds. It was more economic. They couldn't. It's like, well, how do you compete with slave labor? Because they work pretty cheap, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's Wilmot's Proviso. Now he based that on what was it, like the Northwest Ordinance when they banned all slavery in the Northwest Territories. So he had some political precedents on which to stand. How did Congress view the Wilmot Proviso?
Well, the Congress felt, well, first the amendment, it passed the House of Representatives twice, but then it failed in the Senate this time.
So obviously the North had more representation in the House, but
So the Southerners had no capacity.
yeah, well, they didn't have a majority. There was no majority, so there was no way they could pass on that. Okay, so that was one option. One proposal was David Wilmot's Proviso. What were some other thoughts on slavery versus territory, or free states and territories?
The farmers.
Didn't Lewis Cass have a plan? Didn't he have Lewis Cass from the great state of Michigan? Didn't he have a plan?
Oh yeah, he felt that they could decide how slavery was going to be used, if it wasn't going to be used or not, by popular sovereignty.
Popular sovereignty. So in other words, let the voters choose on what it's going to be. What about the South? Did they have any plans for this, or any ideas for determining slave versus free states? Here. Didn't like John C. Calhoun weigh in on this? So obviously what Calhoun is saying, what?
Well, Calhoun was obviously for the slave, wanting slavery in the West, essentially. But I think he had someone speak for him because he was too sick at the time. But he was very adamant that the West should have the decision, or should be, or have the slavery go into the West, because I guess he also felt like it would help get their agriculture started too.
Also on legal grounds, he's saying, slaves legally are property, which is what they were. He said, if you're a farmer, there's no provisions preventing you from taking your horse or your livestock or anything like that into the territories, and that's your property. So your slaves are your property, and we shouldn't deny Americans their rights to take their property into territories. But obviously that didn't go up very well in the North because they were economically opposed to slavery. So those are kind of like our three plans. So we had popular sovereignty by Lewis Cass, and we had the Wilmot Proviso, and then of course we had Calhoun's plan where slavery would be allowed. So obviously they're going to settle on popular sovereignty, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay. Now, the time all this is being discussed, something happens in California that's going to actually force this to come to a head. And is that what you're talking about today? Because you look like a minor 49er.
Well, it all started on January 24th, 1848, with James Madison, and this was actually 10 days before the signing of the Mexican and United States Treaty.
You mean James Marshall?
That's it.
Because Madison's dead. Yeah, I think he was dead by now.
Yeah.
Father of the Constitution.
Marshall. James Marshall.
Okay. James Marshall. John Marshall. James Marshall.
So he was working on a plantation sort of thing with John Sutter, and he was helping to build a sawmill. And he looked into a little creek that was running by. He saw little gold, little shapes, and so he tested these shapes, and they turned out to be gold. This then hit the city really hard, and it caused like a pandemic almost, and it got put out in the newspaper, the Californian, and soon the entire nation was in a frenzy. And in 1849, 80,000 people came to California and searched to strike it rich, and about half of these people were from America. The rest of them came from England, Britain, Germany, China, in Japan and Asia and all these other places to come and get rich. But the percentage of people who actually became rich from the gold rush was very, very minimal. The people who actually did well were the people who set up like saloons and places to stay for these miners while they came and tried to pan for gold, and which never really actually worked out.
Yeah, so like less than 1% of the guys who went out there found gold. The guys who sold them stuff, then they did pretty well.
He made some good money.
Because like Levi Strauss, that's kind of because he made the pants.
Yeah.
Turned to Levi, and he started selling them to miners because they always had holes in their pants.
Yeah.
So he made tougher ones, and still making money today off the pants.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What was it like out there? So basically, I think by the early 1850s, we had like hundreds of thousands of people now in California. And prior to California becoming a state, there's no law there. So you got a couple 100,000 men, very few women, some gold, probably a lot of liquor. Doesn't sound like a good mix.
Yeah, there was like in California itself, there was like 9% women, and in the mining fields there was about 2% women. So there wasn't really very much order, and the men sort of like ran it, and all they wanted to do was get rich, and none of them really did. So it just caused chaos, and then everybody like drank, and it was like just rowdy.
So you're saying without women, there's like no order or anything
Well,
like
I mean,
that?
Yeah.
It's just like a big the whole time. Okay. And the women who were there, they were like working girls,
Yeah.
so to speak, and they weren't taming the men at all. Okay. So it sounds wide open. What do they propose to try to bring some law and order into this wild territory?
They proposed to make it a state in.
Well, that's going to lead to the crisis of 1850. We'll talk
Yeah.
about that with the next group. Okay. All right. So what else do we know about the gold rush and this whole situation? Or was that it? You're about tapped out.
Well,
Kind of like the surface gold in California. You're done.
I mean, pretty.
Okay, well, like we said, nearly 1% of the almost panners made it rich, but the real people who profited were the ones who started companies and used machinery to dig, and I think they found almost, I want to say $2 million worth of gold so there was gold there, but you just had to have the machinery to find it, and the people who were by the streams with the shovels and hands didn't really find that much.
They'd have to move on, and then the big businesses with the big machinery would come in and dig mine holes. That's actually, we'll see, that's a pattern that will be repeated all over the West, where you have a gold strike or a silver strike, and the first few guys there might make some money, and then after that they got to come in. It takes a lot of money to sink mines, build railroads, and hire people to do that, and obviously individuals can't do that. So that's who made the money. Okay. All right. What's ironic about the timing of this? We haven't talked about that because it is pretty amazing the fact when Marshall found the gold, California had just come into U.S. possession, hadn't it?
Yeah, and it was 10 days before the signing of the Mexican and American Treaty to end war together, so it sort of drew all the attention from that, and people left businesses and stopped worrying about that, and just everybody flocked to California in search of gold. So.
But just think if Marshall had discovered gold in 1847, that gold might have gone to Mexico. Because it was 1848, all that gold went to the United States.
And then another thing is that the whole nation had found out about it through the president's farewell address, and it was during the time of growing sectional tensions.
Did this help heal any sectional tensions, or did it hurt them in the long run?
It hurt in the long run.
It led the whole issue of free versus slave state with
Because now
California.
that California came in, people wanted to bring their slaves to help them mine, but that also caused problems with the other miners. They didn't like people bringing in slaves to have them help. They felt they should do by themselves, and it also caused the conflict of, well, if California came in as a slave state, it would change the balance of the non-slave versus the slave states.
Well, same thing when they came in as a free state, though. It would throw the balance in favor of the North. So anyways, I guess that's what the next group has to talk about. So Thank you. Or did you have something else?
Oh,
you sang.
Yeah,
You
we have a
sang,
song,
yeah.
and an easy way to sort of remember the gold rush all together. So it's a repeat after me song.
So that means
You guys
that
wanna
you
sing?
have to repeat.
Yeah. So it's only as good as you guys want to make it.
Okay. But you worked really hard on the song.
Alright.
We worked hard on it. It's
Yeah.
good. So
Okay.
Steven will start it off.
All right. So I have a little clap again.
Okay.
We're going out west to find some gold.
Going out west to find some gold.
The weather's real nice and it's not even cold.
The weather's real nice and it's not even cold.
James Marshall found it first.
James Marshall found it first.
Little did he know it was America's curse.
Little did he know it was America's curse.
80,000 men came really quick.
8,000 men came really quick.
Half by land and half by ship.
Half by land and half by ship.
Men sought fortune, fame, and style.
Men sought fortune, fame, and style.
They left their wives for a little while.
They left their wives for a little while.
Shoveling dirt by a stream.
Shoveling dirt by a stream.
Was outdone by big machines.
Outdone by big machines.
Death rate was along the west.
Death rate was along the west.
1,000 murders and no arrests.
1,000 murders and no
I
arrests.
said there's a gold rush.
Gold rush.
Gold rush.
Gold rush.
Gold rush.
Everybody.
Go dig.
All right. Thank you very